Hello, everyone. We are fresh off the Thanksgiving holiday, and that means we're doing another episode of the Talent GTM podcast. So thanks for tuning in again. I am so excited to have Craig Rosenberg here. Craig, before we, dive in, I would love it if you could give everyone a quick look into your background and what you're
Sure.
doing.
Sure. Happy to. So is this the Thanksgiving episode or the post-Thanksgiving episode? This is important.
This is post.
Okay. All right. Yeah, someone else got the Thanksgiving.
Oh no! I mean,
Um,
okay, we're after Thanksgiving. You are the Thanksgiving. Okay, in that
okay,
case,
good.
you're the Thanksgiving episode. So, congratulations!
Yeah, like I'm
Congratulations.
old enough where it was always the Charlie Brown Thanksgiving special was on only during that time of year. So it was the Thanksgiving special.
Right,
Um,
right.
so I'm thanks for having me on. So my background overall is in go to market. And so right now I'm the chief platform officer at Scale Venture Partners. So my team works with portfolio post investment, and we're primarily focused on go to market. So strategy, people, process, technology, tactics. You like the second one, right? The people part. And
Yes.
That's been my life though. So before I joined Scale, which was about 3 years ago, I had founded a company called Topo, which was a SaaS sales and marketing advisory firm, and did that for about 8 years. Then got bought by Gartner. So I spent 3 years as a analyst at Gartner, which, if you know me, sounds crazy because I was an analyst for a long time, but I'm just a little odd for that business. And then,
Fair.
before that, I had founded another online media company. But my background has always been driving revenue, whether it's marketing, sales development, sales, CS, and that's what I bring to the table here. So, yeah, that's me. I hope that helps. Oh, wait, I have a podcast too. It's called The Transaction, and my team always gets mad at me because I never mention it.
Well, I
That's
was going to ask about that once we got through, but I'm glad you plugged it.
oh, is that
We'll
question
plug it
5? I
again.
jumped that.
We'll
All
we'll
right,
plug it again.
all
It's
right.
great. So we need more business podcasts that people actually want to listen to and can give good advice versus
Oh,
people
well, I
just
appreciate
listening to themselves talk. So
that. Is true. Yeah.
you have a very interesting background, even as an operator and an analyst, right? What shaped your point of view on hiring, and specifically why you believe relying on your network can limit founders more than they realize?
Well, first let's talk about hiring, and then let's talk about how you do it. Yeah.
Okay.
So, well, first of all, I think so we'll go all the way back to Topo,
Okay.
which was so we would go into SaaS was, you remember the days, like it was just like
It
wow,
was,
people were
yeah,
moving from spreadsheets to this thing, and
yeah,
from client server to this thing, and it was so that it was like now, except there was like clear category winners. So we were working
right,
with all these amazing companies, and so there was a lot. And what I saw from my experience was that for particularly with startups, I feel like the mature companies have a little bit of a different process, which you can teach me about. But like from companies, and by the way, for me, startups are until you're what, 400 million. Like you're still figuring
yeah,
things out as you
right,
go. And so I saw a number of different flavors. So one was, so we were giving advice, right? And we were giving, rubrics, tactics, you name it. Like in sales, we did everything all the way down to sales training. In marketing, we had, here's how you run ABM programs. But
right,
if you didn't have, this sounds so obvious, but there's nuance here. If you didn't have really good people doing the job, it didn't matter. We saw it
right.
every time. Now, what is a good person is something you and I talk about because you and I both deal with startups. The issue is making sure that you understand who that right person is for your
Right.
business. That's hard, and like that's part your business. Just so everyone knows, a good recruiter, recruiting firm, recruiting consultant, whatever, they help you think through what you're trying to hire and then
100%.
follow you along the way as you figure that out. that was the interesting thing. So ready? So here's the nuance to the nuance, which is, so you hire, so let's say we were working with really hot companies and they would say, well, we want from these four companies. And they were all well ahead of what they did. And that was a mistake because they were able to hire those folks. So they thought, well, this is great. But those people weren't ready for the business. This was like the example I'm giving was a PLG open source company. So you can't hire people from Salesforce. They you can, but you have to really dig deep to figure out,
Yes.
can they understand this business? Number two is like, they couldn't understand that everything was still broken, even though it was a $250 million company. And requires a certain kind of person to not say, well, it's broken, I'm out of here, here's my badge, to it's broken, how do we fix it? And then, so that was part of that unique experience. The other part was, even if you're trying to scale, you have to be able to get these types of people and you have to do it fast.
Yep.
You have to do it fast. And so when we talk about sort of how you do it, that shaped me in a big way. It was hard because we would, so we had by the time we got bought by Gartner, we had 200 customers. So I had a lot of SaaS. I'm going still back in Topo.
Yep.
I can relate this to our 60 portfolio companies today. We can generally, when we get to know, the folks in the seat that are going to go execute, this isn't going to work. And it's for a variety of different reasons. And mainly what we just talked about, which is this requires fit. The second part of that fit, though, is like what you're trying to do in that consultative approach of trying to figure out who the right person is. It's not just where you are; it's what you're trying to do, and can that person be able to help you think about that in the right way. So, that's what shaped me. I know that you have to hire well. And I know you have to hire fast. Like we do Series A investing. You want to be B in
Right.
22 months at the latest. That means, man, I don't even know what kind of numbers you try to get people in the seats at, but you got to, right?
Oh, okay. So you
Fast.
said something really interesting, right? Like obviously when SaaS started, and I think in like the golden age of SaaS, right?
Oh God, yeah.
It was a great time, right? Those of us who were in it, we did well, and it was it was different than it is now, right? Even though there are still a lot of opportunities, right? Including like with AI. But you talked about hiring fast. And right now, what I see a lot of people saying and doing, from investors telling them to, founders that we work with, they're like, hire slow, fire fast, because we're in this era of responsible growth. What would you say to that?
I'd say hire fast, fire fast.
Yeah. Why not the
I
hire
hate the
slow?
fire part.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, because you don't have time. And
Yeah.
I mean, I'm okay. Look, I'm okay with making the right. Well, because there's a second part which is important for when we talk about recruiting. I also believe that in a short amount of time to go hire, you need to talk to as many people from as many different flavors in and
Yes.
outside your network that you can, because that will help you figure out who is the right fit. And so that does take time. I agree. But like sometimes the hire slow thing gets really, really slow. Like I'm talking like
100%.
yeah. And you don't have time for that. And the second thing is, you do have to take chances. So like, that's why I hate the fire fasting, by the way. When I said that, my heart fell to even say that. It's like people's lives.
Yeah,
But
totally.
the point is, you do need to do that. And you, by the way, you should like, you should learn from the recruiters and keep talking to people no matter what in your business. Right. So like,
Yeah.
an example is this old guy that I used to eat breakfast with every quarter. I used to say, what's the one piece of advice you give me? He said, ask everyone who's the best sales guy you've ever run into and ask for an intro and meet him for breakfast. I know you do that all day. We should just
Yeah.
copy, recruiters
Right.
on that one, because you just got to keep talking to people. All right. I get, so you can see I'm all over the place. My point is though, you need someone to help manage you through the recruiting process. And you need someone to go hunt as many people as you possibly can talk to until you can truly narrow it down. And then when you do, you can't be like, well, they have pink hair.
Yep.
You have to be like, you know what? They have pink hair, but we're going to go.
Right.
because we know enough to be really the issue. I understand the hire slow philosophy. I do, because they're
Yep.
trying to say, well, make the right decision. The issue is you shouldn't say hire slow. You should say, let's have a process that's thorough, that reaches as far and wide as we can, so that we can meet candidates that what we believe is a profile and are pretty close to it, and take chances on talking to people that are even crazy. Like if Krissy's like, you got to just talk to this guy. I know he's not the job. Do it.
Yeah.
And then, you have to have a process for whittling it down. But like these things make you also, it's not just the hiring, it makes you a better manager, and it makes your company better.
Yeah.
I just believe that. But anyway, yeah, I think you hire fast, but under the tenets of the hire slow, which is, let's make good decisions. Let's make sure that we're talking to as many people as possible. I just don't believe it should take a year to go do that.
This is why I really enjoy talking to you. And just for the people that listen to this, I swear I did not set him up to say that. And you have a very unique perspective at the VC and investor level, right? Of just it's you hire fast when you have a good process and everyone is aligned with what they're
Yeah.
looking for, versus letting
Yeah.
fear and anxiety and panic run the process. And that's what leads it, right? Like, well, what if it's a miss? And then that what if it's a miss drives everything, and you miss great talent, right? And you don't trust the professionals you work with. You second guess everything, and it's a nightmare, right? So I totally agree. But that kind of leads me into, from a conversation you and I had
Yeah.
offline, right? Which was, you talk openly about something most VCs won't, right? That relying too heavily on your network can actually hurt hiring outcomes. And I'm curious what got you thinking differently about that. Was there a moment or data point that shifted your perspective? Because in this era of responsible growth where hiring is totally different for SaaS now, like when I tell you, when everyone says like, I want someone really specific, and they've got to have this specific industry. I mean, they literally want someone who's done the job like twice and is a unicorn, right? I'm like, sometimes I feel like we're unicorn hunters, and
Yeah.
unnecessarily. But
Mhm.
most will, if they get an intro from their network, right? Or they will abandon all of the criteria, or a lot of the criteria, or make, exceptions, right? But that's also said, well, they trust them. So they know, they seem to have, they performed elsewhere. But like, why do you actually think that that's an issue and doesn't work?
Well, I don't know if I'd say that's it. Well, it's an issue in that you abandon everything. So first of all, I believe in both, right?
Okay.
I and that's where I was saying before, you should talk to as many people as possible. Okay. You and look, here's the thing. That's the unwritten rule for me. This is the same for sales. That you know, luck, which is your network's like, hey, I've got this person, you should go meet, and it hits. That actually, so let's say that happens once and you haven't done everything. That will happen once.
Yep.
It will keep happening if you are doing what we just talked about, which is you have a massively wide net of recruiting. You have recruiters. You should, in my opinion, maybe this is why I'm on the show, I believe you should hire a recruiter because they hunt. We want to hunt. We want to find people that
Yeah.
aren't in our network and talk to them. But that doesn't mean you don't use the network. It
Sure.
just means you don't do what you said. The way you set it up was like, well, then you abandon everything. No, you do not. You do
Right.
not. Everything should be multi-channel. And I can promise you that if you have like a massive hunting exercise, that you will get lucky, like
Yeah.
from the network. But I promise you, it'll only happen once or twice in the, in the start. And you're gonna be like, well, I'm just going to use network. No, you hear this all the time. I'm sure it's like you're running processes, and then they say, well, we found this guy in the network. Well, that is great. I don't know what it is. It's some karmic thing. It's because you're out having you're out recruiting, you're doing all these things, but you can't rely on it,
Yeah.
because if you want to scale, like, this, the fastest growing companies on the face of this earth, who have big companies with the best people in it that have great networks, have recruiters,
Yep.
lots of them.
Yes.
And it's because we have to hunt and find the the best people with sometimes with a different background than we thought in order for us to find the right people for our business, often a diverse group of people in our business. And by diverse, I don't just mean the standard word of diverse. I
Yeah.
mean like you came from I came from company X, so that little sort of ecosystem there, I go to that. No, man, I need someone who's going to go out to go way over there and go
Yeah.
bring those because we don't know until we go hunt. And so for me, like if you take do I believe you should? Of course. Why wouldn't you use your network? You should do it.
Sure.
But like if you want to do the speed and you want to hire fast, fire fast, you're going to need a hunter. You need someone whose life they spend all day. That's the thing that people don't quite understand is that like the recruiting in the recruit, these folks that recruit, that's what they do for a living. They know where to hunt, they know how
Yeah.
to hunt, they know how to go get people, they know how to bring them in. And I think the second problem for recruiters, especially with early stage, is they don't realize in the start you're going to miss.
Yeah.
And you have to talk to them and come back, and then you got to come back to the recruiter and say, well, here's what I did, because they will adjust. They want to make money, so they're going to adjust. The issue often in early stages is like, well, they sent us these candidates and it didn't work. And
Yeah.
actually that's fine,
Yeah.
honestly. Like, I mean, and they're like, well, you said hire fast. I'm like, yeah, but like if you don't,
Yeah.
like all us old folks would say, like me, I'm old, I got the gray beard. We'd say if the first candidate you like is rarely the one you're going to hire, because you just have to keep going.
Yeah.
And you just need a recruiter to go do that. That's the issue on the network thing, is that you should put it out there, meet as many people as possible, and you might hit.
Yeah.
But like to win fast, you got to sick the dogs on this process. And the second part I like about hiring recruiters is they're so experienced in how we get it done internally and how you should be thinking about things, that having that resource is really important as well. But
Yeah.
I got a really company that's just killing it. They're doing so in the hundreds of millions, and they've got recruiters up the wazoo because they want to hire fast, they want to hire the best people, and they want to say no.
Yeah.
You actually can't say no unless you have a full funnel of candidates that are flowing, and
Right.
that is what that's kind of where you and I talked about the conversation. I mean, I wouldn't discourage the network. I would just say relying only on that is dangerous.
Yeah.
You want a multi-channel approach to talking to as many people as possible that could fit the role. Second thing I'm sure you see is like, look, when you do that too, you'll talk to people who are like, you may not hire them now, but if you're good and, I have a lot of really good founders that never forget those people that they met. And,
Totally.
as things keep going, it's like now they've got this network of potential folks, but you don't get that unless you talk to a lot of people. I
Yeah.
feel like the good founders are willing to do whatever amount of meetings per week. Now I know they got to run their business, but like they get it,
Sure.
right? They just
Yeah.
get it. So
Totally. Well, I
uh,
think, look, I mean, from a time perspective, right? It's
time.
hard. Hiring is time consuming, right? Which
Yeah,
is a reason why you hire. Sometimes that could be one of the main reasons that you hire a recruiting firm,
totally.
right? Of, hey, I have a good network and I know what to look for. I may not have all the tools, but I can do it well enough, but I don't have the time to manage all of this, right? And I think, the only thing I would say is I actually don't think you have to talk to tons and tons of people. I think the bigger issue is like actually knowing what you want, right? And working to make sure you understand what that looks like. Like an enterprise AE in fintech, as an example, is different no matter the company that's in, fintech, right? It's what
That's
are the
true.
behaviors, what are the skills? And that ICP, that ideal candidate profile, is something that I find a lot of people miss. They're like, okay, here's our job description that we went on LinkedIn to our competitors and others hiring, and we copied it and then we made our own tweaks. And now we've put that out there and we have 4 steps in our process. And they think that's an interview process. And then that's where, people just don't really, they're just trying to talk to people that make them feel good about the job description that may not actually even like fully align with what they need. Right. And What are they
Totally.
assessing? So, and then you miss great people that actually
Yeah.
may not have some of those things on the job description, but have the areas that you need to just be rock stars, right?
Totally.
So, but
Yeah, I get it. I on the talk to that was sort of there's a contradiction in what I said in terms of time talking to people. By the way, there is another advantage to having people drive conversations with that type of like my buddy Dennis Leandros, he was CRO of Procore. It was crazy. Every time he'd come back to me with a good idea, he learned it from someone he was interviewing. I It was amazing. He'd be like,
yeah,
he was trying to get a VP of sales, and he kept coming back to me going, "Dude, do you know what SAP does when they do
yeah,
this?" He's like, "Do you know what Infor does?" Because they were sort of talking to those enterprise ERP types, and so there's always value there. So okay, I will give in. Maybe you don't need to talk to as many people. It's one of the reasons you hire the recruiter. In my opinion, one of the big things though the recruiter does do is the hunting and these
yeah,
finding of people.
agreed.
That's really hard. And the vetting, the initial vetting. I mean, if you have a good recruiter, you're not wasting
Yeah,
a complete
totally.
amount of time.
Yeah,
Because, like I said, like a guy like Dennis would come back literally every week. We meet on Mondays. He was a client and he'd have a new idea. And I'd say, "Where'd you get that?" He said, "Oh, I was interviewing this guy." And he just, he told me all about it. So
yeah,
there's
yeah.
just, I know we got to hire fast, but there's just too much value in the right kind of people and the value of interacting with people. So
Totally. No, I completely agree. So, when you look at early stage companies, where do you see a network first hiring approach actually help, right? Versus where you see it quietly working against them? I know we've talked about it a little bit, but just curious where that can be valuable, especially for like hire fast, right? To actually get the reps in.
wait, sorry. Say the first part of the question again.
When no worries. When you look at early stage companies, where do you see a network first hiring approach help versus, where you actually see it quietly working against them when they're trying to hire fast? And maybe it's their first from a startup perspective, like it's their first enterprise account executive, right? Which is the
Yeah.
one that people or their, founding sales AE. Where is
Well,
that
by the way,
helpful?
that's you mean, yeah. So, well, it's helpful in that if it's your first one, going to the network, you can actually uh, that actually is faster, not to hire, but to have conversations,
Yeah.
which is what you need to do because if it's your first one, you're that's a use case where you should talk to um, as many reps as you can. The issue is if you come to me, right? I'm in a venture capital firm and say, "Hey, we're hiring an enterprise AE." I'm the only people I'll be able to recommend are the ones who have already made it. Now, those could be good because they have that experience in building, but also they've already made it. Like
Yeah.
they've been through the process and now they're earning, 300 to 500K a year with a patch that they understand, with a product they understand, and going back to the grind, even though they think they want to because they made a little money off stock and they want to go for a big one again. They may not be ready
Yeah.
for what that takes. But on the other hand, you want to talk to them because that is what we were just talking about. Like, so you do go to the network. So when people come to me, I said, go talk to these three people, maybe five. And I'm not saying
Yeah.
they're looking. I'm just saying this is the kind of person that you want to hire who, help build a similar type business as the founding AE or early hire.
Yeah.
And you should do that. That's valuable, hugely valuable. By the way, I do that for everything. Like even when we recommend hires, we'll say, recruiters. So, if we said, "Hey, go talk to, Blueprint," we would before, as part of that say, "And by the way, go talk to these 3 to 5 people from our network. They're close to your business. They may fit the job description. They may be close enough, and go talk to
Yep.
them." I'm not saying they're looking. I'm just saying
Yep.
go talk to them. And there's huge value in that. Sometimes you pick people up, as you know, but nobody should be
Yeah.
disappointed if they don't. Like that for early stage, especially on the hire you just brought up, like that's one where, going in the network and having an initial 3 to 5 conversations with folks that sort of fit that bill or have done that is hugely valuable. The issue, as you know, is a technical founder hiring their first AE should come to their network, ask, you should ask your venture capital firms like for some intros. They'll give you some. That'll get you going. That'll help you gel kind of what you're looking for. It'll help you understand how these guys talk and what kind of works and doesn't work as well in the interview process. But you're going to need a hunter to go find
Yep,
someone.
totally. I love you talked about having conversations and differentiating between just like interviewing only in your network, because that's so spot on. I think the older we get and the more successful we get, even as if you're a young founder, right? And you're doing well, we can forget to be curious because we've become so successful, right? And so we're not as we want to just whether we want a fast result or not, we become less engaged in actually asking questions and learning and trying to understand, hey, what does great look like, right? And taking a moment to pause, actually have those conversations, which is always time to discover greatness, right? Because it will actually save you time at the end. So I love
Yeah,
that.
no,
I think that's great
I
advice.
totally agree. I gave you the story of the old guy I used to meet for breakfast who had that, introduced me to your best sales guy. I've sort of taken that as like a life policy now. It's like, so if I'm talking to a CMO and I'm like, besides you, who's the best CMO you know? And if they say it, I'll say, I want to meet him. I just meet him and I learn a ton. And now that doesn't help on the speed hiring, I know, but like it is a good piece of advice that I've received as just a person in business over the years. And like, it's just, it's valuable. If it's relevant, it's valuable.
Yeah,
So,
I I totally agree. I mean, even in my career, I have a strong network of people just
well,
from
sure.
hiring and working with them. And I've even seen folks that have worked incredibly well for me in the past, like just crushed it and didn't work as well at another place, right? And it wasn't because they weren't good, but you know, the place I was at required a different skill set, or maybe they were at a different point in their life, right? I always remind people like human beings are not robots. And so what we did maybe 5 years ago, 2 years ago, or 10 years ago, there's so many things that can happen that can switch how we kind of interact in an environment that may feel similar, or it actually, the environment's still similar, but they actually have a lot of differences and nuances that are not going to apply to the skill sets of this individual. So it's interesting. And I think that's where having those conversations is really helpful to help you understand, hey, what does great really look like and what am I wanting? Okay. So last question here. If you had to give founders one simple rule of thumb for hiring beyond their network, like something they could implement tomorrow, beyond conversations, what would it be?
Um, you mean, and besides hiring, is this a setup besides hiring a recruiter or?
No, this is not a setup. You don't have to talk about recruiters. This is not set up. You don't even have to say hire
Yeah.
recruiters.
No, I know. And I appreciate what you said because I have overemphasized the conversation thing. I think, so the one piece of advice is, well, one is you should, always be recruiting, but that's a conversation type thing. But the big one is, you're in all likelihood, we talked a lot about the hunting and the talking to people, but the process by which you hire, even in a small company, um, I would lean on, folks like you, and there's plenty of people I could talk, because that is the other area where we can't hire fast. You and I talked about it in the start as this, like, how do you hire fast? The thing that I got from what way you interpreted my rambling was, you can do the hire slow rationale. The rationale for it is get to the right people, right, and hire the right person. Uh, that is because that will, in that sort of philosophy, is it'll save time in the long run. What we were saying is, if you have the right process, and that includes everything, not just the hunting, but like, how to, what's an interview thorough interview process, and how do we test for what we think we're looking for? You can still hire fast and hire well, but if you don't figure that out, then that's actually where you can fall down. It could be anything from, I use the word test. Like I have a guy that works with me, Robert. That's his big thing. Is like, what are the 4 traits, and 4 things we want to look for? Well, let's see. How do we test for that? And it doesn't have to be like some, you know, uh, Green Beret exercise, but it is important. And then how do we get everyone on the same page that that's what we're looking for? And we're not worried if they have pink hair, and like we have to all be on board to do this in a month. You can still hire fast and thoroughly, but that requires alignment process and like internally in order to be able to go do that.
Well said. And I just want to emphasize on that last point of the alignment, right? Because
Mm.
we had a client that had CS, they needed to hire a CS manager, and they had 2 failures and they couldn't afford a third one, right? And so they needed someone that was going to get their hands dirty, but also have leadership potential, which is like 90% of what everyone's looking for right now, regardless of their role. And so we spent 3 weeks before we started the search making sure comp was aligned, making sure we had an ideal candidate profile, and hey, what did we really need here, right? There was like a lot of back and forth, and so one individual like didn't really want to do that. They're like, I need to get started. Like we're behind all these things. I was like, this is how we operate. Like we are going to get this right. Once we did that, the hiring process was so fast.
Yeah.
And I remember one of the executives saying, I was surprised at how smooth that was. And I was like, that's because when you stop trying to fix it and figure it out in the middle of the process, right? It's actually really easy. You know what great looks like. You know what you like. You're not questioning yourself on if you want to move them to the next level or not, right? And so I just emphasizing on what you said, I think is a great point, because the work and the time that you put in that might be a little bit slower is before you start the search. It's not necessarily during the search, right? Which is where I think
That's a
people,
good way. Well said.
so it makes up. But well, that's all the time we have today. Craig, where can people find you if they want to
Well,
reach out to you or hear your podcast?
yeah. Well, I think I'm a LinkedIn person. I'm always on there. So you can always just reach out to me there. But if you want to hear insights, if you like my constant rambling, I have a podcast called The Transaction, which is doing really well. It's all go to market topics. So if you're into go to market, I'm your guy. You can go listen to that.
Love it. Take a listen. Thanks for joining us today. And with that said, we'll see you next time. Bye.
Thanks.